Good afternoon. My name is Mindy Thagard, and I will be discussing with you the need for water during the ancient society time period of 3100 BCE to 100 CE. As we look throughout history, we see different societies forming, and we question why they started where they did. What if I could tell you that water could create wealth within a city? And because water could provide a city with wealth by increasing their food supply and also their grain supplies, we see the need for regulation laws begin to form. They just want to ensure a constant supply of water for their cities. So looking back at early civilizations, what determined a city? Well, historians identify a city as having more than 5,000 individuals in one location. This is seen in Chapter 1 on page 1. Now, why would so many individuals come to one area and begin to grow? Well, we see ancient societies are mostly built up near a body of water. For example, Egypt built near the Nile, and this was very important to their success as a society because their area was very sparse with rainfall. China chose to build near the Yellow River. The Yellow River was recorded to have been a very violent river, and they found ways to make use of that water. The Chinese adapted to the river. They also, by dredging it to remove any silt and prevent any flooding. This is in Chapter 1 on page 3. We start to see early records of irrigation beginning. The ancient societies formed their own irrigation to move water into their farmland and into their cities. Farmers began using materials from earth. They would use clay to build pipes, and they would use wood in order to move the water inland. They also found that gravity was to their advantage and used it to transport the water. Now, Rome was recorded as having the most extensive water systems. They formed aqueducts and sometimes would have to build large bridges over valleys in order to get the water from their water source inland to the city for the people to use. They also were noted to have tapped into nearby springs in order to have water in which they felt was suitable for drinking. Now that we have irrigation moving water inland to the farmers, who can use that water? When they determined that, different societies set up different rules and regulations. In Rome, there was an application process for individuals to apply and request the use of the water. Once approved, they were able to tap into their city's water source. This is Chapter 1, page 15. Also in the Code of the Hammurabi, referring to irrigation in 1750 BCE, we see early records of negligence laws that begin to form. There had to be a clear right and wrong for the farmers so that they could follow that and build the city up, such as number 53, if a man neglects to maintain his dike and does not strengthen it, and a break is made in his dike, and the water carries away the farmland, the man in whose dike the break has made shall replace the grain which has been damaged. And this is in Chapter 1 on page 12. Now this piqued my interest because to me, very early on, ancient societies started to determine the negligence laws to make their individuals whole. So if someone causes something to happen to someone else's property, you must make them whole. And to me, they did this so that farmers would all work together in order to grow their societies. Now, water created many opportunities within the city and many different jobs. So farmers, they had to provide a food source. Now, their food source was grain and also other gardening foods that each society would grow at that time. But grain was a very important source because it was used as payment, and it was also used in trading. People would trade grain to other societies, and in doing so purchase jewelry or fabric, and the more you could purchase, the wealthier you became. It was also a form of payment to the city for taxes. So grain was very important during this time frame. Farmers also began cultivating the food sources for their city, creating jobs for individuals to transport food, the product, into the city. Now, once we get into the city, we now have merchants. Another job that the merchants purchase the food and supply it to the laborers. Laborers use that food as a source of energy to build buildings and structures for their city to grow. And all of this dominoes back to water. Without the water, we wouldn't have these large cities. Now, early records of water use, they revealed to us some very impressive developments in the engineering of irrigation system and using materials that they had on hand at that time to transport water inland. And then once it got to the farmers, what the farmers did with that water was essential to the growth within the city. So it just all comes back to it takes time for the city to grow because this is a process. And it reminds me of the old saying that Rome wasn't built in a day. Thank you and have a good evening.